and the Iranian nationalism as a white supremacist nationalism with a twist, the twist being that Iranians are white, became official state ideology under the Pahlavi regime. Hi, friends. By now, you've probably seen viral clips of the Iranian pro-Pahlavi diaspora protesting the Iranian football team that's competing as part of the World Cup, or rallying in support of the war on Iran and Trump's bombs on Iran, and showing gratitude to Netanyahu and Trump for their assaults on Iran, and so on. And they always carry an Israeli flag. And many of you have been baffled by this phenomenon. And today I'm here to explain it to you. Now, the conventional wisdom here argues that the diaspora is made up of a lot of people who have experienced oppression and trauma in Iran, and as a result have been driven to a level of desperation that has forced them to side with the enemies of, well, in their minds, not of Iran, but of the Iranian state. So because the Iranian state supports Palestine, they therefore side with Israel. They see their actions in opposition to the Iranian state, not Iran itself. But there's a very good article and book by Reza Zia-Ebrahimi, who's an Iranian studies academic, that challenges this conventional wisdom. And he argues that it does not go far enough in explaining the deep-rooted racism and Islamophobia of the Pahlavi, the pro-Pahlavi ideology. And this is very important to understand. In this article in Jadaliya, Zia-Ebrahimi defines a concept called dislocative nationalism. And he talks about how since the 19th century, the Iranian elite and intellectual class have developed this form of nationalism in parallel, in conjunction with the European racial ideology. He talks about how the European racial thinkers came up with the idea of the Aryan race by turning a linguistic category into a racial category. So they argued that any group of people who belongs to the language group that's known as Indo-European, which includes Persian, is essentially part of the Aryan race. Now, of course, to them, Iranians were a debased form of the Aryan race. The intellectual class in Iran in the 19th century, they took this idea and ran with it. And they tried to internally claim that Iran is, in fact, part of the Aryan race and part of the white race as a result. He calls it dislocative nationalism because Iran is essentially taken out of its material and immediate geographical context and is made to be essentially cousins with Europeans, which is kind of insane when you think of it. But it's even more insane when, fast forward to early 20th century, this ideology of the Aryan race and the Iranian nationalism as a white supremacist nationalism with a twist, the twist being that Iranians are white, became official state ideology under the Pahlavi regime for most of the 20th century, that is up until the 1979 revolution. There are many examples of how this racism and Islamophobia played out under the Pahlavi during the reign of the father Pahlavi and the son Pahlavi. And it can also be argued that the reason the 1979 revolution took an overtly Islamic character was in fact a reaction to the Pahlavi ideology, which was deeply anti-Islam and racist towards Iranians themselves. And Pahlavi famously tried to modernize Iran by essentially turning Iranians into Westerners, changing the way Iranians dressed and the customs and so on. So it's a very good article. I highly recommend that you look through it and let me know in the comments what you think. One final note I want to add is that I'm personally really grateful that the pro-Pahlavi people are finally coming out as who they really are. Because for 47 years, this same ideology disguised itself as the legitimate opposition to the Iranian state, claiming that it supports human rights or women's rights or minority rights. But now that it's coming out with its own flag and with its own prints, with its own original ideology on full display, and with the Israeli flag to, complete the narrative, being anti-woman and anti-minority and pro-genocide as they are, I think we should believe people when they show us who they are. So this is definitely a step towards freeing Iran from this fake opposition. And if you want to support Iranians, I think you should read this article and help Iranians to delegitimize this group. Imagine Iran has been culturally colonized by this ideology since the 19th century. It's high time that we see this ideology for what it really is, and once and for all, leave it in the dustbins of history where the racist European thinking also belongs.